First thing I would like to do is acknowledge the family of Mr. Gillard, who was the victim in this murder case from Saturday, and give you a few details of what we can give you right now. The Dothan Police Department received a complaint at 9:32 a.m. Saturday morning in reference to an attempted shooting at the intersection of Wheat and Walnut. Is it Wheat and Whidden? Wheat and Whidden. Officers responded to that location and attempted to contact the complainant and were unable to do so. At 11:03 a.m., the police department received a second complaint of a shooting on the 800 block of Whidden Street, which is essentially the same location. Within a few moments, the officers arrived at the scene and discovered that the victim was laying in the edge of the roadway, had been shot twice in the back. The officers who responded to the scene immediately began administering first aid to the victim. Throughout the course of the investigation, evidence was recovered. Multiple residences were searched. Some of those were consent searches, others search warrants. Evidence was recovered that linked this individual that we have charged, Andre Flagg, with the murder of Mr. Gillard. The investigators worked throughout the evening to identify and locate the suspect in this case. Over 40 interviews were conducted and multiple man hours, 120 to be exact, was put in this effort to bring this suspect to justice as quickly as possible. Sunday morning, about 7 p.m., based on overwhelming evidence we had identifying Mr. Flagg as the suspect in this case, a vigilant patrol officer observed him walking down West Main Street and got out with him, briefly interviewed him, and took him into custody. He was brought to the police department where he cooperated for a short period of time and then stopped cooperating with us, invoking his Fifth Amendment rights. He has been charged with murder in this case. And again, I want to talk just a moment about our hearts and prayers go out to the family of this young man who was killed. We had a representative from the local Wiregrass Angel House, and I want to thank them for coming out and meeting with investigators and the victim's family on Sunday. So we want to acknowledge their help and their contribution. They're a very strong support service for our community. With that in mind, I'll take a few questions, but please understand that there are probably some things that I can't answer for you. This is an ongoing investigation. I will tell you that we are, the original call at 9:32 a.m. Saturday morning, we have researched it and come to find out that it was the crime of shooting into an occupied vehicle was investigated, and we are identifying a suspect, and we're going to obtain felony warrants on that individual. And that was what precipitated, I think, this entire incident. So with that, I'll take a few questions.
Was the suspect and victim, do you know if they knew each other?
We don't know it for sure, but we don't think that they did.
Considering that that you say the investigation is ongoing, and we've also had information that there might have been more than just Mr. Flagg and Mr. Gillard involved in the altercation. Were there other people, can you tell us, that were involved, causing you to continue to investigate?
Yes, sir. The altercation and the evidence that we have that leads us to believe that indicates that there were probably 20 or 30 people at that intersection during that period of time, and words were exchanged, and an altercation broke out, and Mr. Flagg basically walked up to the victim and just shot him in the back twice. We are working to identify the other individuals that were involved in the altercation, and we are going to seek adjudication on as many of those as we can, regardless of whether they're a misdemeanor or a felony. That is to be determined. Again, cases like this are very complicated, and many leads have to be followed through with, and that's what we're in the process of doing, but we wanted to let everybody know where we were.
I'm a little confused about the 932. You said you'd be getting warrants on somebody. How does that person figure into this? And if so, can you tell us who that person is?
No, sir. We don't want to disclose that at this time because we haven't obtained the warrants, but we're comfortable that we will. But we believe the situation that occurred at 09:32 hours was continued at a later time based on that incident. This second incident occurred.
I didn't get very clear on that. I'm sorry.
I don't want to call it retaliation because we haven't
Okay.
evaluated or we haven't
But
interviewed the individual.
Is the person, this is not going to be either of the people, the murderer, like alleged murderer, or the obviously the victim here?
That is correct.
Have you been able to piece together any information about what caused the altercation to take place and why there were so many people involved in this? I know that there have been reports that there's a lot of drug activity in that area. Is this part of what caused all this to begin with?
Well, that's an area known as the Hill, and yes, we received numerous complaints from that area, but that's now, complaints on drug calls move around, and we try to address them as we get them. So, to say it's possibly drug related would probably be an accurate statement. To say that there may have been some individuals that profess to be gang related as part of that would be accurate as well. We have a lot of people to interview that we haven't identified yet that were involved in it. So our work right now is to identify those individuals and to bring them down and talk to them about it.
Chief, one more question. I understand you're not the prosecutor. It's not ultimately a decision of the district attorney. But based upon your knowledge of the law, is there could this potentially fall under a capital murder case?
I don't believe it will. No.
Can you tell us a little bit about the investigation itself? How many officers were involved in this? And take us through kind of a little timeline of how all this took place and you were able to make the arrest.
Typically, when we have a case like this, we mobilize. I guess it would be a good way of putting it. We had 20 investigators on this thing that worked around the clock. I know I stepped out of church a couple of times yesterday to talk to some of the detectives. So 120 man hours. I'm really proud of the way the investigators handled it, and the patrol officers. They spotted this guy walking down the street, stopped him, did a field interview, turned out to be the killer. Any other questions?
Was there another shooting over the weekend also in Dothan?
No, I'm not aware of another one. There may have been some confusion because we do believe that shots were fired at 9:30 a.m. on that day in the same location. And then 2 hours later, you know, we had this incident. But when officers got there at 9:30, there was nobody there. Nobody in the neighborhood, you know, came forward and said, hey, I saw this or saw that. Again, 9:30 in the morning. But that's where we're at. As far as I know, we didn't have any other gunfire, any other shooting. Now there was a case where on South Oaks that a round was fired off and went into one of the healthcare facilities, and we made an arrest in that case, didn't we? We have not. Okay. Still investigating. Okay. Excuse me.
Was anyone hurt in that incident?
Not to my knowledge, no. You know, we take the we take it very seriously when people start firing weapons in the city of Dothan, whether they're shooting at an individual, a car, a bystander. That's what people need to understand is those bullets, they don't stop when they miss their target. They continue going, and that was the case. That was what the case was on the south side of town.